Hey guys. This is part 8 of What If Naruto Was Adopted by the Anbu. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 16, All Roads. Dinner was being hosted by Inuzuka-tsum, something that had occurred at least once a month since Naruto was tiny. The table had become more crowded since the Hyuga had moved in, though the overall chaos of the evenings had remained roughly the same. Kakashi and Naruto turned up at the compound a little after 5 and were welcomed by a random Inuzuka. "Tsum-sama is around somewhere," he said, gesturing vaguely. Kakashi nodded. He knew from experience that he had maybe half an hour before he was expected to eat. He was comfortable enough to wander into Tsum's home unaccompanied. The living room was empty, so he chose to chill out in there for a while. Curled up in a corner lounge, he took advantage of finding some rare quiet time to open the letter he had picked out of the letterbox on the way over. It was addressed to him in a familiar handwriting, and he wasn't surprised when he opened it to see it signed by Rin. "Dear Kakashi," it read. "I'm glad Mr. Uki survived being used as a weapon. I remember Sensei giving you that plant for your birthday. Obito had wanted to get to a Venus flytrap, and I'd argued for something with blossoms. Minato-sensei was adamant that you'd like that plain little fern though, and well, he was right." Kakashi chuckled. He hadn't heard that story before. He could just picture it, the three of them in the nursery looking at rows and rows of plants. Obito had probably broken something. Rin would have catalogued every plant's pros and cons. Minato-sensei would have won every argument by simply declaring his right to veto. His son pulled him back to the present. "Dad? HM?" Kakashi folded the letter so it couldn't be read by any curious little eyes and looked expectantly at Naruto. The Jonin had gained a few interesting grass stains since he'd been unleashed to play, and had materialized seemingly out of nowhere. "Can I go with Kiba and a couple of his cousins to play at the creek? It's just outside the compound gate that way." He pointed to the left as if his father could see through walls. The little creek was one Kakashi was familiar with, and it was just where Naruto had said, "But what about dinner? Some will call us in soon." "We won't go swimming," Naruto pleaded. "Kiba thinks he can catch the little fish in there, and I told him I bet he couldn't, and now we want to see if we can figure out how to catch them." A bit of childish nonsense, then. What could Kakashi do but wholeheartedly support it? And send along a well-known wet blanket tattletale to prevent mischief, of course. "Certainly you can go," he said. "Just as long as Niji goes with you. Invite Hinata too, if it's not a boys-only adventure." "Ah, Dad," whined Naruto, but didn't try to plead his case. He trotted off presumably to find the Hyuga. Kakashi opened the note again, reading the rest of the message. It went on to tease him about the rumors of arranged marriages that had reached her and chatter about the events of Rin's life. He'd just finished reading when a soft sound made look up. Hiashi was standing in the doorway. "Good evening," Kakashi greeted. "How are you?" Hiashi returned politely, moving closer. "I heard that you were down with a flu. Are you recovered?" "Good as new," Kakashi said. He didn't bother with any more polite small talk, just said, "Is something the matter, Hiashi-san?" Hiashi did seem discomfort. "There is a group of children leaving the compound," he said. "They insisted that Niji accompany them. Naruto-kun assured me that you gave your blessing." It was phrased as a statement, spoken as a statement, but was still a question nonetheless. Kakashi nodded. "I did," he said. "They're going to see if they can catch silverfish. I told Naruto he could only go if Niji went too, so that was why he probably seemed very keen for Niji-kun to agree." Relief passed almost imperceptibly over Hayashi's face. It made Kakashi wonder what he'd been afraid would happen. Then again, Niji was a boy with a great number of inherited disadvantages. Perhaps Hiashi worried over the cruelty of children more than he let on. But amusement chased the expression away. Now that he was assured it wasn't the setup for a prank, Hiashi gave one of those Hyuga just barely a smile face twitches. "He is rather irrepressibly sensible," he said of his nephew, obviously very aware that Kakashi had insisted he join them to chaperone rather than for Niji's benefit. Settling in the opposite corner of the couch, he added, perhaps the other children will even trick him into having some fun while he's out with them. Kakashi laughed before he could stop himself, but recovered quickly and shuffled a bit further along the sofa to give the older man more room. How are the plans for reconstruction going? He asked. Hiashi grimaced. Slowly, he said. Trying to get the elders to all agree on a blueprint and stay within our budget is challenging. Half of them want the compound rebuilt exactly as it was brick by brick. The other half are pushing for upgrades in design, but seem to think we can gild the whole place in gold and still have money to spare. Kakashi winced in sympathy. That sounded like a headache and a half. Really, for all that being a family of two could be lonely, at least he was the unequivocal lord and master of the Hatake household. It would drive him insane to have to barter and negotiate with a full committee before any major decision was made. Companionable silence reigned for several minutes. Kakashi went back to the letter. He smiled as he reread the final paragraph, which contained a very familiar admonishment to look after himself. It catapulted him back in time, to an era when Rin would say that to him every day during training, when he pushed himself so hard it bruised his flesh, tore his muscles and fractured his bones. Gradually, the memory faded and Kakashi became aware that he was being observed. Hiashi was watching him read and smile and reminisce, taking in the picture with an unreadable face. When Kakashi looked up at him, Hayashi's eyes drifted down to the paper Kakashi held. Seeing the Hyuga looking, Kakashi quickly folded the note so the words couldn't be read. Then he realized how secretive that would seem and waved it a little. A letter from an old teammate, he said in what he hoped was a light and dismissive tone. Hiashi seemed to weigh him with his gaze. I rather thought that you and Tamanaka-san were somewhat at odds. Kakashi winced, wondering why he was feeling sheepish at being caught out grinning at a letter from Rin. We're patching things up, he said carefully. Hiashi stared at him for a moment longer, then nodded once. It is good to repair old friendships, he said, tone as neutral as ever. Kakashi nodded back. It's nice not to be fighting with her, he admitted. It's been so long, I'd almost forgotten what it was like. Hayashi's mouth softened in the way that stood in for a smile. I can imagine, he said. He opened his mouth to say something further, but was cut off by a shriek. Ma! Naruto fell in the stream. Kiba's voice traveled through the walls clearly, loud enough to make both men jump. I did not. You pushed me. Naruto was just as loud, and completely outraged. Kakashi rubbed his temple. How do they manage to be heard from outside the compound? He said. Hiashi shook his head, debating whether to go and attempt to sort out the dispute or to leave it to the other parents. Kakashi solved the dilemma for him, getting to his feet. I'll go fetch them in and get them all dried off enough to eat, he said, long-suffering. Hiashi nodded back, watching the young man go. Did spawn of mine holler? Said a lazy voice from behind, less than a minute after Kakashi had left. Standing at the window. Hiashi turned towards her. Kakashi has gone to sort it out, he reported, and the woman grinned at the dodged responsibility. She clambered through the window, making Hiashi wince at the marks her shoes left on sill, and shook herself off when she was inside. What were you and the kid talking about so serious-like? She asked. Before the fourth great shinobi war erupted outside? Hiashi straightened his collar, smoothing it down carefully. Nothing of consequence, he said, shrugging. We were discussing plans for the reconstruction of the compound, and some letters Kakashi has been exchanging with the young doctor who was his teammate. What? Hiashi blinked, not having expected Some to have exploded at such volume. Well, he knew from whom Kiba had inherited his impressive communication skills. Don't you remember what happened the last time she was in town? Some half shouted, jabbing a finger at him to emphasize her words. She's a train wreck. Don't you think you're being just a bit dramatic? Said Hiashi. No. You ain't being dramatic enough. You're all who. She waved her hands vaguely around herself. Nothing bothers me, I don't care about nothing. Hiashi rolled his eyes. He had been more open about his emotions with Some than he had ever been with any person since his twin had died, including his own wife. Some knew it too, when she was calm, so he didn't bother to correct her. It's just a letter, he said instead. No, it's what the letter represents, Sim insisted. It represents a desire to reconnect with an old teammate? Honestly, women baffled Hiashi. Why did it matter if the surviving members of Team Minato were in communication? Surely it was a good thing that they were no longer feuding? Reconnect, Sim echoed derisively. Bah. He's looking to connect with her under th sheets. Why does your mind always go to that? Hiashi said, exasperated. Honestly, Sim managed to work the topic of intimacy into almost every conversation they had. Despite her anger, Sim took a moment to flash her sharp teeth in a grin. I'm a worldly woman, Hyuga. I know how things work when you're young and dumb. And what girl wouldn't want Kakashi? He's a catch. She glared as if daring Hiashi to say otherwise. Hisashi shook his head. He couldn't deny that it was possible that what Sim was saying was true, though he highly doubted the consequences would be as catastrophic as she predicted. I don't see why you feel the need to intervene, he said. You've often told me that you wished Kakashi would socialize more, speak to women his own age. Now he is and you're upset? Sim glared. What did you do if it was Niji writing little love notes back and forth to some girl who almost ruined him? She demanded. I'm not sure the letters are romantic in nature, Hiashi repeated, ignoring several glaring flaws in that comparison, namely, that Niji was under Hayashi's guardianship, and bound by a dangerous seal, and 14. Kakashi was clear that they were just attempting to mend some bridges. I believe it has yet to develop into something more, if it will at all. Sim snorted rudely. Well, of course he would say that, he knows we'd tell him off. Hiashi sighed. Hard. Then he sucked in air and sighed again for good measure. What was that thing that he'd seen some of the younger generation do in this kind of situation? A face hand or facepalm, whatever they called it? He was beginning to see the appeal. It is none of our business, he said, as clearly as possible. If Kakashi means to woo this girl, there can be no argument against it. Bullshit, Sim said bluntly. That kid has suffered enough for a lifetime. He needs to be protected. Sim, if he is indeed interested in her, and I maintain that it is none of our business if our interference would cost him happiness, and he would never forgive us. If he is simply attempting to re-establish a friendship, he would not thank us for complicating matters. A variety of expressions flickered over Sim's face, mostly variations of frustration. Finally she growled and flopped down beside him with a huff. Fine. We'll leave him alone for now. But I still don't like it. That is your prerogative, Hiashi said. Sim rolled her eyes and shuffled further down the couch so she sprawled against him. You're a good influence on me, you know that? But don't you go try and teach me manners and stuff. That would be a mammoth undertaking. Well done, kids. You're all getting much better, Kakashi praised. His sticky, sweaty, exhausted Jonin panted up at him, too worn out to even hate him for his patronizing tone. Sakura, today was a perfect example of how, despite the fact that you have excellent chakra control, you need to work on your stamina. Naruto, you're the opposite. For the sake of everyone in Konoha, please remember to aim away from the village when you learn new jutsu. Sasuke, no comment. Sasuke glared. Sakura glared. Naruto laughed. Kakashi smiled and reached a hand to help his child to his feet. You three are done for the day. No missions this afternoon, have a half holiday. I do mean that no more training today. You all need some time to recover. We'll pick this up tomorrow morning. Let's all go out to lunch, Naruto suggested. Kakashi looked down at him, surprised, before his expression turned indulgent. If you want, he said casually. Naruto cheered and turned to try and haul his teammates onto their feet. Thud! He hollered. Come on, Sasuke team, Dad's buying. I didn't say that, Kakashi protested on principle, but a look from Naruto and he folded. Ma, fine. My treat. The teacher, seeking to avoid arguments as much as to at least make an attempt to drill manners into his hard-headed child, asked Sakura to pick a place for them to eat. Blushing and shooting Sasuke nervous looks, Sakura chose the barbecue restaurant that Asuma's team frequented, though Kakashi doubted that she knew it as such. After distributing promises to Naruto that they would have ramen for dinner and to Sasuke that after a meal he would be free to disappear into solitude, the decision was voted a good one and Squad 7 proceeded to the restaurant for food. Kakashi preferred to walk 2 steps behind the kids and listen to Naruto, standing in the middle of their little 3-person line, chattering away animatedly about whatever crossed his mind. Movement flicked on the edge of his sight, and Kakashi automatically began scanning for threats before his conscious mind had even registered the disturbance. It turned out to be a tiny shadow skimming the ground. Kakashi's eye followed it up until he spotted what was causing it, a brown bird of prey, circling high overhead. He sighed, and looked reluctantly at the kids. Duty called. And then he fell into the stream, and we had to chase him all the way to the Red Bridge before we could fish him out again. Didn't we, Dad? Dad? Naruto had stopped, and was looking up at him with wide blue eyes, having realized the Jonin had stopped following them. Are you okay, Dad? Something's come up, Kakashi replied, cringing inside at the way Naruto's face fell before the blonde hurriedly hid the expression. Digging in his pocket, he fished out his wallet and handed a generous sum of money to Naruto, adding, "You go ahead. I'll see you at home later. Sasuke, Sakura, tomorrow, 8 am sharp." He disappeared in a shunshin cloud before he could spot the eye roll or, far worse, forlorn face aimed his way. He rematerialized on top of a water tank 2 blocks away and began to walk briskly towards the Hokage Tower, jumping from rooftop to rooftop easily. Slipping into the window set in the wall of the corridor outside the designated meeting area when the hawk was used to summon them, he nodded to Asuma, who was just coming up the stairs. Opening the door, he let Kurenai through first and slid inside after her, looking around. Seemed everyone was here. He chose a spot in the back, as far from Guy as he could manage. Sarutobi was sitting in his padded chair, front and center, his Hokage hat tilted low so only his pipe could be seen protruding from beneath it, a tendril of smoke curling upwards. After an appropriate pause, the old ninja spoke. "Seeing who I have invited here, you probably are all aware of the purpose of this meeting." Kakashi blinked. Surely it couldn't be time already. No, because then Naruto would be almost 11 instead of just 10, and that was not happening. Beside him, Genma shifted. "Have you told the other Kage yet?" he asked. "I've noticed a bunch of foreigners wandering around the village lately. When's it going to be?" "1 week from Wednesday," Sarutobi replied, reaching to push his hat back enough that he could see the group standing before him and they in turn could see his face. "That's a bit sudden, isn't it?" Kurenai murmured. Asuma nodded at her. "Listen to my official announcement," the Hokage commanded. "In 10 days from now, on the 1st of July, the Chunin exams will commence." A murmur went around, despite everyone in the room having known what was the Sandaime was going to say. Sarutobi's mouth curved into a knowing smile at the excitement that swept through the room. The Chunin exams were always a big deal for the Jounin sensei. In another few moments, they'd begin clamoring to nominate their teams. "Now then," he said, getting down to business before chaos erupted. "I would like to first hear from the teachers of our 3 rookie teams. Kurenai-sensei, Kakashi-sensei, Asuma-sensei," and he almost didn't stumble over the added sensei to his son's name, too, "step forward." Kakashi pushed through the crowd to get to the front, joining Asuma and Kurenai in a row before his leader. "Tell us," the Hokage said, "do any of you think your students ready for the exam? They have all completed the required 8 missions needed to be eligible. Beyond that, it is up to your judgment. Kakashi, you may speak first." Kakashi froze. Even his heart stopped dead in his chest, he was certain. He stared at the Hokage like an oncoming train as the world seemed to freeze and spin around him all at the same time. Chunin exam. His students. Naruto. What should he do? Every eye was on him. He knew they were waiting for him to speak. But his brain was stalling, he couldn't think, let alone form a respectful reply. Kakashi took a deep breath and forced himself to think logically, quickly. Sasuke, he was probably ready for the exam. Sakura, she could stand a chance, maybe. But Naruto, his baby boy, the son that had been dropped in his lap without consent or warning. The boy he had spent years raising, years learning to love. There was no way he was ready for the Chunin exam. Those other, bigger shinobi would eat him. Besides, when he became a Chunin, the Hokage would tell him the truth, that Kakashi was not his father, that he had been lied to his whole life. Naruto would want nothing more to do with the Jonin after that, Kakashi was sure. He'd probably even demand a name change, from Hatake to Namikaze or even back to Uzumaki. Kakashi just wasn't ready to take that risk. Not yet. But what about Sasuke and Sakura? Was it fair on them? Not really, but he was sure they'd survive. He'd just force-feed them some nonsense about needing more experience until they believed it. And Naruto was only 10. He could wait a few more years before becoming a Chunin. Raising his chin, he looked the Sandaime square in the eye and said, I, Hatake Kakashi, Jonin Sensei of Squad 7, do not nominate my squad for the exam. I do not believe them ready. Another whisper went around, this one shocked rather than excited. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow and blew out a puff of smoke. Are you certain, Kakashi? He probed. Many have been expecting your son and Uchiha Sasuke to be the first put forward for the exam. You are sure you do not think they can handle the exam? They are too young, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said honestly. Too green. The exam could destroy them. You were just 6 when you passed the exam. With flying colors, I might add, Sarutobi pointed out. Kakashi felt a flash of annoyance. Sarutobi-sama, I have strived much of my life to differ from my father, and I do not wish to push my son as hard as my father pushed me. There is no need to rob childhood and force my child to what he is not, mentally or otherwise, ready to do. In many ways, I feel it was a mistake to allow him to graduate from the academy early, and truly only signed the paper authorizing it out of a very real fear for the continued existence of Konoha's denizens' houses and sanity should I not relieve his boredom in some way. Even if there was a need for more Chunin, I would still refuse to nominate my team. They are not ready. He finished his little rant with a stubborn jerk of the head and glared at the Hokage. How dare the old man question his judgment? Protective instincts were flaring wildly, making him want to bundle Naruto away where no one would hurt him. He wasn't entirely sure why he was feeling this way, but chose not to question it for fear of finding an answer he didn't like. Sarutobi on the other hand rolled his eyes a little and nodded. You have convinced me, Kakashi-sensei, he replied, sounding only vaguely exasperated. Asuma-sensei? What have you decided? Asuma grinned in Kakashi's direction before stepping forwards himself. I, Sarutobi Asuma, am not a wimp like Kakashi and accordingly nominate my genin for the exam. Asuma! Scolded Sarutobi as the rest of the room tittered. His son gave him a defiant smirk, and he sighed. Very well, he said tiredly. Kurenai-sensei? What do you say? Kurenai glanced between her two once classmates. My team is ready. I'll nominate them. Sarutobi nodded. He glanced once more at Kakashi as if half expecting peer pressure to change the young Jonin's mind. Kakashi didn't blink, so he nodded again. All right. 2 rookie teams will be entered. How about the rest of you? Gai-sensei? Gai shot Kakashi a fairly significant look as he stepped forward, and hesitated before speaking. Watching him, Kakashi mused that he'd likely been planning on using the Chunin exam to prove he was a better teacher than his rival and win a challenge. It was funny to watch the battle between his fanatical devotion to competition and the need to do right by his students. In the end, the needs of his students won out. Hokage-sama, I nominate my team for the Chunin exam. They are ready. Well, Sarutobi said, looking between the 4 Jonin again. This is sure to be interesting. Jonin-sensei wages were frankly depressing. They were paid the same pre-tax percentage of mission profits, nearly 17%, but that added up to a miserable sum when all the missions they took were deranked. Sensei also got a weekly stipend to deter them from taking on C ranks too early and or murdering their students out of sheer spite. Still, it was a fairly significant drop in income. As 3 of their group now lacked the funds to bankroll what used to be their weekly night out, the group congregated instead in Kurenai's apartment. They were drinking soda instead of beer and playing one of Kurenai's battered old board games instead of winning bets with the dartboard, but it was still much the same atmosphere. Naturally, after the lack of money and alcohol had been sufficiently complained about, conversation turned to gossip. Topic of choice? The upcoming Chunin exam, and the announcement made about it by the Hokage. Did you see Dad's face when Hiashi put forth his team again? I swear, he just about slammed his head against the wall, Asuma sniggered. There was a sort of general titter over the shared misfortune of their fellow Jonin and the Hokage. Yuhishi's genin singular, the other two had long since been promoted and re-promoted. One even had his own genin team already, was something of the village headache. Sweet and gentle and very skilled, he inexplicably failed the Chunin test. Without fail, every year. This is going to be Kabuto-kun's 10th attempt, said Kurenai. You gotta think that he's eventually going to have to give up. He can't do that, Asuma said. I mean, could you imagine if Kabuto-kun didn't make Chunin? Ever? There is nothing wrong with being a career genin, Guy said more pointedly than usual. He always had a kind word for the poor, pathetic medic genin. I didn't mean it like that, Asuma protested. He knew that Guy's own father had been unable to progress beyond a genin rank for his entire career. Rankism was something of a pressure point for Guy. I just meant, look, the kid's got the skills to be a Chunin. I've seen him training, and he works shifts unsupervised at the hospital now. He just freezes in exams. Part of the test is whether you can stay calm in a stressful situation, Anko argued. I mean, would you want to be on a team led by someone who can't keep his nerve the 9th time he's faced the same controlled challenge? Yeah, the kid just freaks out, Genma agreed. He'd been a supervisor last year in Suna and had seen how Kabuto had gotten all the way to the final round, then had a meltdown and refused to participate. Hey, speaking of freakouts, Asuma began. Genma groaned bodily. No, he said. Just no. We're going to have one evening where we don't obsess over Kakashi's neurotic tendencies. We do that all the time. He doesn't even hang out with us. We're still his friends, Kurenai said. Besides, he doesn't have as much time to hang out as we do. It's not like any of us have a kid. My rival is antisocial, but it is part of his charm, Guy said, almost convincingly. To be honest, I'm still holding out hope for a tumble with him, Anko admitted. Yeah, he's only been saying no for 15 years. He could still change his mind, mocked Genma. Anko grinned at him. Exactly, she said brightly. I thought my rival had managed to turn your head to Aoba, Guy said, his expression torn as always between amused and disgusted. Guy was really too innocent to live in the adult world. Anko wrinkled her nose. Been there, done him, got bored in the process, she said in just the right kind of tone to make the rest of the group recoil. Ugh. Why would you say something like that? Anko, you're not allowed to talk anymore. See what happens when we let Kakashi be the topic of conversation? Genma whined. Come on, guys. Can't we hang out just once without it turning into an exposition of all of Hatake Kakashi's problems? Sure, said Kurenai carefully. But could it be next week? I kind of really want to gossip about Kakashi's little scene today. You mean his rant about Naruto? Kurenai nodded, waving her hand. Kakashi had an amusing reaction to the exam announcement. Discuss, she said imperiously. A couple of the others giggled. Was anyone really surprised? Asuma said dryly. I mean, really? We all know that Kakashi is protective. No way was he letting Naruto into a dangerous exam. I worry about that kid, Anko mused, digging in the bowl on the table for her favorite variety of sweet. She ended up with a handful of orange yubes and stuck one between her teeth victoriously. I mean, she said through it, he's what, 10? 11? By the time we were his age, we'd already seen so much combat it hurt. I would not wish that on any child, particularly the beloved child of Kakashi, Guy said sternly. Anko rolled her eyes and threw a yube at him. Duh, she said. But I dunno, shouldn't there be a balance? That kid's gonna get himself killed if he doesn't get some field experience. Asuma snorted. Good luck getting Kakashi to take them out on anything higher than a D rank, he said. Naruto's gonna be Konoha's next career genin, just you wait and see. I dunno, Genma said dubiously. Kid's got some serious skills. More likely he'll be promoted up the chain and suddenly dumped into a situation he can't deal with because he's been overprotected. There was a moment of communal fretting. Maybe we should do something? Kurenai suggested dubiously. She was met with no fewer than 4 eye rolls. Remember the last time we tried that? We were lucky to escape with our skins, Anko retorted. Asuma got up and moved to the fridge to get more soda. It's gotten so bad I've even mentioned it to Dad, he said, selecting the most obnoxiously electric purple drink there was. And? Guy prompted when he didn't immediately continue. Asuma shrugged and clambered over the back of the couch to reclaim his seat in the middle. He made a bunch of excuses that basically boiled down to how he doesn't care, he said, disgust palpable. He's not gonna force Kakashi's hand one way or the other. Then maybe we have to, Genma said seriously. Anko, Asuma and Guy nodded. Kurenai made a noise of disbelief. What, so when Genma says it you all agree? I just said we should do that. Yeah, but Genma said it in his deep sexy voice, Anko said cheekily. Kurenai made a noise of frustration and threw a checker piece at her. Anko threw a handful of sweets back, causing Kurenai to catch up the whole game board and pinwheel it through the air at her. It will need to be soon, Guy said, the only man in the room not silently rooting for the altercation between the two women to turn into a wrestling match/catfight on the living room floor. Genma sighed as the girls settled down. This is why I didn't want to talk about Kakashi, he mourned. The guy's a buzzkill. Guy shot him a baleful look. It will need to be soon, he repeated. If we intend to intervene with my youthful rival and his treasured heir. Yeah, probably pre-exam, unless we want to put it off until after the whole thing's done with. Anko ran a hand through her hair to dislodge a straight checker and reclaimed her seat. None of the others seems inclined to delay, so she added, and we'll need a really bloody good plan or else Kakashi will dismiss us out of hand. Did this just turn into a plot how to fix Kakashi's problems meeting? Genma said. Come on, guys. Next week, no Kakashi discussion, Kurenai reminded him. She was holding the front of her shirt, trying to work out how to fish out the sweat that had fallen down her brow without it being too obvious. Genma subsided with a grumble. And after the exam Anko and Hade can treat us all to a booze up with their proctor bonuses, Asuma declared. Anko's shouts of dismay were drowned out by cheers. Kakashi wandered into the Hokage tower. Well, wandered was his attitude. More literally, he jumped, clambered, shimmied and crawled into the tower through the back entrance, the one that bypassed the front desk and its crazy Chunin. He was pretty sure it had been made by the first or second Hokage, or even the third in a fit of youthful whimsy back when the tower was being built. After all, easily in meant easily out. He knew that Minato-sensei had used it on occasion to dodge the extra paperwork that came from being the boss. However the passage came into being, it was now the main road of traffic into and out of the tower for anyone Jonin and up. Kakashi slid through the powerful wards and made his unhurried way through the back passageways, looking for the room he was supposed to be in half an hour ago. It didn't do to be too late to meet Sarutobi. Yo! He said as he pushed open the door, and blinked in surprise. Quite a crowd was gathered. Hi everyone, he said, coming inside and selecting a seat. Kakashi. Asuma spoke, and his voice sent all the worst kinds of alarm bells ringing in Kakashi's mind. Another look around the room showed not just a crowd, but his whole social peer group. Suddenly he was less sure that this was a mission briefing. What? He said. His friends exchanged wary looks. You're our friend, Kakashi, said Kurenai. You've got our back, added Anko. You help us out whenever we need it. Were we ever in mortal peril, you would be the first to take action, Guy asserted. And if you saw us doing something dangerous, Genma began. Or unwise, Hyuga interjected. We know you try and help us, Genma finished, flicking his senbon in annoyance and frowning at Hyuga. No matter what. Right. Right, said Kakashi slowly. This was obviously a rehearsed speech, but everyone was so nervous they were falling over their own parts. And they hadn't yet reached the point, which was unusual. A horrible thought occurred to him. Are you guys in some kind of trouble? What's going on? Again they exchanged looks, a ball of hesitation being passed from one person to the next before finally being lobbed out the window by Anko. This, she said, is an intervention? That threw Kakashi for a loop. What? He said. Anko, don't be re. Kakashi, we all love you, And we know you're really doing your best, Green-Eye broke in. Her hands were being clasped together like she longed to reach out and touch him but didn't quite dare, and her voice had gone fast and high like it did when she was anxious. Please, just hear us out. We're your friends and we really want to help. With what? Kakashi spat before he could help himself. He looked around the circle, alarmed by the grim, set faces on every side. There was no hint that this was a joke, no whisper of a prank. They actually felt there was something seriously amiss. What's wrong? We're worried about Naruto, said Hyuga. He is not progressing as a youthful shinobi should, said Guy. If Kakashi had been sitting, he would have jumped to his feet. As it was, his back muscles actually tensed as if to raise non-existent hackles. Are you saying I'm not doing a good job teaching him? You want him reassigned to another Jonin? No, scoffed Asuma. Of course not. Dad raves about you, so we never get him to go for it anyway. No, we're just worried. We were thinking you needed our help with him. He needs to see some blood and hellfire. For his own good, Anko added. Keep away from my son, Kakashi gritted out, fingers twitching with the urge to do something violent. Fear and anger bubbled in equal measure, feeling like a war between ice and fire under his skin. All of his friends tensed, ready to flee at the moment his sanity snapped, a fact that only added to his irritation. Chill out, Kakashi, snapped Asuma, unconsciously leaning forward so his body was between Kakashi and Kurenai. No one is going to go all baby snatcher on you. We learned that lesson from Rin. Glares all round made him roll his eyes. Too soon? Sorry. Back to relevant stuff, Anko said, jabbing her elbow into Asuma's side. Kakashi, we are not aiming to hurt your kid or your family. We're just worried about the two of you. We think it's time to let him dip his toes into shinobi life. Enough preparation. He's had 10 years of it, that has to be enough, agreed Hyuga. What are you talking about? Kakashi asked. He couldn't have been more suspicious if he tried. Genma scoffed and pulled his saban out his mouth, beginning to use it to clear the dirt from under his fingernails. That's disgusting, said Kurenai. Don't put that back in your mouth. We have arranged for your squad to get some C-rank experience, Genma said to Kakashi, ignoring her. We spoke to the Hokage and... No, Kakashi said. Naruto's not ready yet. He has no combat experience. Because you coddle him too much to let him. Anko half-shouted back. Kakashi, when you were his age you were leading missions into IWA territory with survival odds 5-1. And I don't ever want my son to have to face that. Kakashi screamed. There was a silence that lasted long enough to settle on them all like a blanket, long enough for Kakashi to become mortified at his lapse and take a firmer grasp of his emotions. Then you should have made him a librarian instead of a shinobi, Genma said, voice low and serious. Or a cook, or a mailman, or a lawyer. You don't understand. I couldn't. Kakashi fell silent, forcing his own words back down his throat. There was never any choice about Naruto becoming a weapon of Konoha, but he couldn't tell his friends that. He had never longed to more than he did at this moment, though maybe if they knew the truth, they'd understand why he had to protect Naruto for as long as he could. I had no choice, he said eventually, keeping his voice controlled. To his surprise, it was Asuma whose face spasmed with empathy. Usually one of the girls had that particular lapse. But a second later, the Sarutobi said, I get it. You're a big shot shinobi genius. Of course those bastards on the council would demand you turn Naruto into the next generation's you. They did the same thing with me, and never quite managed to accept that I'm never gonna be on the same level as my dad. What? Anko sounded outraged. She turned to Kakashi. So you really wouldn't have stuck Naruto in the academy and stuff? You were forced to? Kakashi struggled to answer that one. I didn't know what else to do, he admitted. I never bothered to think of another path for him because I knew he would be a shinobi. Finally, Hate, who had been sitting quietly until now, spoke. The past is gone, he said. We must deal with what is. And Kakashi is smothering his son. I am not. I'm sorry, my rival, but you are, said Guy, undilely gentle. Anko was less so. Use a pillow, it'll get the job done faster, she said. Seriously, Kashi, he's gonna end up dead at this rate. Kakashi hesitated, trying to crawl through the terrifying slush of emotion and back to his cold, rational shinobi mentality. He had to try and see what his friends were saying. They had to be really worried to try something like this intervention. If you were right, what would you suggest? He asked cautiously, and watched hope kindle in each face watching him. You need some time apart. It's past time to cut Naruto's umbilical cord, Kakashi. The codependency is concerning, said Hyuga. So, you are going to go on a mission with Genma. The senbon-toting Jonin looked more than a little nervous, hiding it poorly behind a smirk and a cool dude lean. He had lost at paper scissors rock fair and square, though he was still convinced that Anko and Hate had cheated. Somehow. Genma. Kakashi's voice was perfectly blank, and Genma cringed. It makes sense, Kurenai hurried to explain. He can't go far, because he's a proctor for the exam. The exam starts next week, so all our missions will be done and dusted with time to spare. For the final exam, Kakashi replied. For when Hate calls in sick, because we all know he will. There was an awkward pause. You're not supposed to know that, Hyuga said serenely. The 3 proctors drew lots for it, if it makes you feel better. Genma lost. He's really nervous, so you have to be nice to him. Ouch. That hurt. Kakashi looked at Genma, saw it was true, then looked around the circle. Do I really frighten you? He asked them all, trying not to let his dismay show. If even his friends were afraid of him. He was slapped upside the head. Don't be so stupid, said Anko. You're not that powerful, added Hate. I periodically piss off the most powerful shinobi in this village. It's my job as his youngest son, Asuma drawled. Believe me, compared to Dad, you're nothing to lose sleep over. Genma just didn't want to be stuck babysitting you. Trust me when I say it's a worse job than babysitting Hatake Jr. Do not feel insulted that we noticed, my rival, counseled Guy. Feel loved that we care enough to put up with you anyway. Somehow, that was the most insulting thing Guy had ever said to Kakashi, but he decided to just let it go. And what about Naruto? He asked. Then, as an afterthought, and the other 2? Guy, Asuma and I will each take 1, Kurenai told him. We've cleared it with the Hokage and have chosen some easy C ranks to give them a bit of experience. Shouldn't last more than 2 or 3 days apiece, and they won't encounter any worse than wild animals and maybe petty thieves. What? Kakashi said, muscles tensing at the thought of his baby out in the field without his supervision. No! That's too. It's this or Anko taking all 3. Which would you prefer? Said Genma. Kakashi grimaced. Anko had this grin on like she would really like him to pick her, like she had been looking forwards to the evil things she could do with the Jonin team. But, he said. They really are very easy missions, Kakashi, Hyuga said, putting a hand on his arm to try and comfort him. And Anko, Hate and myself will follow to supervise, just to be extra certain that no harm befalls any of your Jonin. Even though he was masked, no one had any trouble seeing how unhappy Kakashi was with this arrangement. I don't think this is a good idea. Guy gave him a truly terrifying grin. Thankfully, my eternal rival, the decision does not rest with you. Naruto was almost ready to go when someone knocked on the door. After a glance at Bull snoozing and completely untroubled, he trotted to the front and pulled it open, then blinked in surprise. Sasuke? He garbled. The last Uchiha was standing there with a bag on his back and a scowl on his face. At least the latter looked more token than sincere. HN brat. Naruto pulled the toothbrush out of his mouth and swallowed the toothpaste foam. What are you doing here? Kakashi asked me to come get you, said Sasuke impatiently. Pack a bag. Dad sent you? Naruto repeated, a spike of fear lancing his heart. Why? Where is he? Is he okay? Sasuke looked a little alarmed at how panicked Naruto got so quickly. Calm down, brat, he said, pushing Naruto back into the house. Breathe. Is this freak-out thing genetic, or am I going to catch it too? That checked the younger Jonin a little. Sorry, he said. I guess it's a habit. He stuck his toothbrush back by the kitchen sink where it had lived since Kakashi had realized his 6-year-old had been habitually skipping the ablution. He grabbed his mission bag, packed the day he became a genin, from the cupboard in the hall and shoved his shoes onto his feet. Ready, he said. There was no conversation as they walked, first to Sakura's house to collect her, and then to the great gates at the front of the village. A crowd was gathered there, but no Kakashi. Team 7. Asuma-sensei called when they drew near. Good. I was beginning to wonder where you were. Good morning, Asuma-sensei, said Naruto. Where's my dad? Your dad's been called away on a mission, kid, Asuma returned. You lot are going to come with us. Hey, everyone. Naruto turned. Kiba! He cheered. Kiba grinned and gave him a friendly bump on the way past. He had arrived with Hyuga, Niji, and Hinata, which completed the squads assembled. Sorry we're late, Hinata whispered to Kurenai, barely loud enough to be heard. The Inuzuka compound is a bit further away than we thought. Quite all right, Hinata, Kurenai said fondly, barely glancing up from where she was checking Shino's bag for some reason. Kiba, get in line. I need to check your equipment. Ah, sensei, whined Kiba instantly, dancing back a few steps. Akamaru barked his support. Kurenai raised one eyebrow. Do you really want to risk a repeat of last mission? She asked, and Kiba hung his head and came to stand tamely next to her. Glorious Genin. Guy made his introduction. Today we shall partake in youthful teamwork. Each of Squad 7 will accompany one of our squads. We will now divide you, so please pay attention. Oh, please, no, Naruto whispered, eyes fixed on the green-clad man. Sasuke had just enough time to wonder what Naruto knew that he didn't before Guy pointed directly at him in the most dramatic pose he'd ever seen. Uchiha Sasuke! Guy-sensei shouted. You will come with me on your glorious first C rank. Interestingly, it was the relief on Naruto's face that filled Sasuke with dread. Have fun, the little blonde said far too cheerfully. Niji-Nizan will look after you if you start to drown in youthful green. Won't you, Niji? He waved a hand at the elder Hyuga, who raised his chin. For you, Naruto-kun, he said, pale eyes flicking over and dismissing Sasuke. It made the Uchiha feel peculiar, to be so disregarded. He got the sense that this boy didn't think him any kind of threat at all. I'm Tenten, the girl spoke into the awkward silence. Our last team member, Lee, is completing a challenge. He should catch up with us before we get too far out of the village. Outside their immediate sphere of existence, another of the Jonin spoke. Sakura? Wide green eyes turned to the gentle voice. Kurenai smiled. I'll be taking you. Do you remember who I am? Sakura's brow crinkled. Kurenai-sensei, Kurenai rescued her. You'll be coming with me today. For a moment, the girl looked panicked at the thought of being separated from her team, but she calmed again almost instantly as her rational side won out. There was no way her sensei would send her into any kind of danger without an overkill of protection detail. This Jonin must be pretty strong if she was in charge of Genin. The last of the instructors spoke up. And so that leaves Naruto to come with me, he said, beckoning for the Hatake to join his little group. What? But Asuma-sensei, Naruto whined, trotting over anyway. Can I go with Kiba? Or even Niji? Please? Oh, that's nice, said Ino before Asuma could respond. Just ignore that you've known the three of us your whole miserable life. Weren't Shika and Chuji your friends in the academy? The words nipped his building pout-fest in the bud, and Naruto had the grace to look ashamed. Sorry. I didn't mean to say you guys weren't my friends. Ino, be quiet, Shikamaru grumbled from his place flat on the ground. You're so troublesome. What team Naruto-kun wants to be on doesn't necessarily revolve around friendships, Ino, Chuji added through a mouthful of shortbread. Enough. Asum cut in before things could get too far out of hand. Actually, you're all right. Chuji is the most right. Naruto, you have to come with me, end of story. Relish the diversity while you have it. Ino, be nice. Shikamaru, try to be patient. Ino huffed and fidgeted. Shikamaru seemed to have fallen asleep. Off to the side, Hinata was hushing Kiba as he giggled. Niji placed a hand on Naruto's arm. Fate leads us down many roads, Naruto-kun, he said in a low voice. Some we would prefer not to tread. Don't you start, Ino half shouted. It was very clear that she knew that she was the reason Naruto didn't want to go with her squad. Naruto flapped his hands at her. Oh, don't get all offended, he said. He wasn't actually trying to placate me, he was complaining. I'm sure it won't be so bad, Nizan, said Hinata. You each have a lot in common with Sasuke-kun. That is what I am afraid of. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Sasuke felt vaguely like he should be offended, if only by the tone of Naruto Brat's laughter. He felt strangely uncomfortable here, surrounded by people Naruto apparently knew well. He really should know most of these people personally, he realized, but had considered them below his notice in the academy. A glance at Sakura showed her in her element, shyly chatting with the female Jonin and shooting scathing remarks at Ino simultaneously. All right. Everyone has their teams, so we should all go. We can all meet up and have a meal or something at the end, okay? Asuma shouted over the din. He seemed to be talking solely to his peers. We'll send the message around to fix a time and place when we all get back, okay? Good luck. That was the cue, apparently, because suddenly everyone was calling farewells and good lucks to everyone else, detangling teams from one another. Sakura was physically steered through the gates by Kurenai, who had one hand on her shoulder, one hand on Kiba's shoulder, and Hinata smushed between them. Shino trailed behind, buzzing faintly. Asuma's team was next out, with Asuma literally kicking Shikamaru to make him move, then assigning Ino to pull him by the ear if when he slowed down. Naruto violently objected to the joking offer to hold the Jonin's hand, and the group was laughing as they disappeared into the trees. The last team eyed one another awkwardly. Then, another teenager ran up on his hands, was greeted by Guy, and they were off. Okay then. Genma leant backwards and flicked his saban to the other side of his mouth. You've seen them off. Happy? Kakashi, sitting next to him in the shadows of the watchtower, was as tense as a coiled spring. He didn't reply. I fixed on the spot where Naruto had disappeared a few minutes ago. And his other two, but it was no secret that the Hatake had an unhealthy fixation on the youngest. Come on, Genma grumbled. It took some doing, but he managed to cajole Kakashi towards the intelligence headquarters. Their mission was going to be a boring, paperwork-based one, driven up in rank by the sheer sensitivity of the information the documents held. He'd argued for a more action-packed mission to keep Kakashi's mind his kids, but the others had argued that a distracted shinobi was a dead shinobi. So here they were, stuck going through all the files of people who'd been cleared to enter the village for the Chunin exam, looking for threats. At the door of T&I, a masked figure waited. Hi, it said. Genma-senpai. That was a voice Kakashi would find hard to forget, even if he didn't recognize the mask. Tenzu. What are you doing here? Tenzu has graciously offered to help with our mission, Genma drawled. The way he said it left no doubt that the ANBU had not offered anything, but had been strong-armed or possibly thanks-buyed. Oh, Tenzu. You really don't cope well with peer pressure, do you? Kakashi mocked. He knew the man well enough to know he was blushing under the mask. Genma smirked and flicked his saban. Leave him alone. Come on, we got work to do. Kakashi chuckled, but followed the others into the headquarters. They got through all the hallways without challenge, and finally reached their apparent destination. A dingy room, the sort that ANBU HQ was full of. A single light bulb dangling above a single table, stacked high with papers upon papers. Bundles bound together with paper clips, each with a photograph stuck on top. Every bundle had a red stamped insignia, TNI, torture and interrogation. Intelligence Division, a green stamp would have indicated the other division. Ugh, said Genma, flicking on the light and squinting as if it would make the papers disappear. All of these? Really? Reality refused to bend itself to his will, so he sighed and picked up a pile. Let's get started then, he said, shoving it into Tenzu's arms. Chapter 16, Growing Up. This mission, Genma decided, had been the most grueling of his entire career. Ever. Dealing with a hopped-up nervous copy named Kakashi at his absolute most impossible was the stuff nightmares were made of. Not that Kakashi was anything but focused on their mission. Kakashi was, after all, a shinobi. A shinobi of the highest caliber, one of Konoha's elite. The best of the best. He was also being torn up inside with worry over his only child, so he had thrown himself into his mission with a tenacity that would have a weaker man feeling a little intimidated. Not Genma. Kakashi, he said for easily the 9th time, holding up a wad of paper with the details of one of the foreign genin teams on it. You cannot mark every team as suspicious. We don't have the manpower to revet each one of these teams. They've already been passed through security, we're just double-checking. So double-check, Kakashi challenged. That squad needs it. Justify this to me, Genma said, waving the paper. Kiko-sensei has filled out all of our paperwork, he's been recommended by his own Kage, he's cooperated with Konoha teams when missions have intersected. There is nothing in here that warrants extra scrutiny. He's from Kiri, Kakashi said. So? Kakashi-senpai, we really can't use this mission to discriminate against the village you don't like, said Tenzu, face down on a wooden bench he had created about 3 hours into this mission. Kakashi crossed his arms. Firstly, I have nothing against the village as a whole, he said blandly. Secondly, take another look at the genin stats. The younger boy. What about him? He has a bloodline. So? So he's from Kiri. With an acknowledged bloodline. There was a long silence. Then Genma sighed and placed the papers on the reinvestigate pile. Sometimes I hate how much work you generate, Hataki. Around the time it was estimated that the genin squad should be returning, Genma ushered Kakashi into the Jonin standby lounge to wait. He was thoroughly over his role as babysitter by that point, and had decided that whoever had failed to drown Kakashi as an infant had unleashed a terrible blight on the world. Kakashi seemed to have formed a similar opinion of his minder, and they waited on opposite ends of the lounge in prickled silence. Guy was the first to reappear, pristine as always but actually looking vaguely irritated. He all but stomped into the lounge, hesitated when he spotted his friends, and walked right past them. Your student requires rigorous work, he said. Kakashi raised a hidden eyebrow. Really? Honestly, he'd have expected Sasuke to be able to keep up with Guy's team, at least well enough to avoid frustrating Guy to this degree. The green beast nodded, tipping hot water into a teacup with sharp motions. His attitude is infuriating. Ah. Kakashi chose not to respond. Kurenai was next to the door, half an hour later and wearing mud and a smile. Good afternoon, she chirped happily. Sakura did really well, Kakashi, you should be proud. Might pay to pawn her off on a female Jonin now and then, though she's been taking advantage of all-male company. She has? That was news to Kakashi, but whatever. He didn't have much mental space for Sakura at the best of times, and right now he was preoccupied. Where was Asuma and Naruto? By the time Asuma finally returned, Genma was about ready to kill him. Kakashi had been all but chewing the carpet in his worry, and it had only made him worse the more time ticked by. The older Jonin didn't get a chance to yell, however. Asuma stomped right up to Kakashi and began shouting first. What the hell is that kid? He demanded. I know he didn't inherit any of that crazy shit from you. Kakashi froze, then lurched to his feet. Is Naruto okay? What happened? Where is he? Asuma shook his head. I sent him to the hospital with the others to get checked over. What? Strangely stupidly Asuma blocked Kakashi before he could leave. Tell me what is up with that kid, he said. I've never seen that much power before. Did he get it from his mother? I'll explain later, let me, Kakashi said impatiently, trying to pry his arm from Asuma's grip. He didn't want to hurt his friend yet, but he was getting close to that point. Asuma held on. Oh, for goodness sake, Kakashi, he's not hurt. Calm down for once, would you? The sharp tone actually got through, and Kakashi stilled, narrowing his eye. Then you had better tell me what happened quickly. And why you sent him to the hospital. That's what you're supposed to do when a genin activates a Kekai Genkai, isn't it? Said Asuma, frustrated. Look, we were supposed to be clearing out a wild animal, but it turned out to be a massive summon, and things got a little out of hand. And in the time between me realizing that and signaling Hyuga to help us out, Naruto had Kakashi looked gray. Naruto what? He said. Asuma shivered. He flared all over with a weird chakra, he said. I almost feel like I knew it, but I couldn't place it. It felt bad. Scary. Kakashi drew in a quick breath, but it was obvious Asuma had no idea where he had felt that chakra before. He probably assumed he'd encountered one of Naruto's maternal relatives in the field before. Which he had, technically. The story actually helped Kakashi place the chakra taint clinging to Asuma. He fought against the revulsion, the nausea that rose when he recognized Kyuubi, and tried to steel himself against memories of that day. I suppose that is a legacy from his mother, he said, trying to keep his voice level. I doubt it would mix well with white chakra. All perfectly true. I need to go find him before the medics set him off. I don't think he can control it yet. And you can? Genma said dubiously. Kakashi fixed him with a flat glare. I guess we'll find out. Naruto was sitting between Shikamaru and Neji. Kakashi was mildly surprised to see the Hyuga, but his arm was sporting a bandage that might have hidden stitches, so perhaps he had a reason to be here. A bigger surprise was Sasuke, whom he knew from Guy's report was totally unharmed, leaning against the wall a few yards away. A wave of inexplicable affection rose in him when he realized Sasuke was here out of concern for Naruto, and he reached out to ruffle the Uchiha's hair. Sasuke jumped, then scowled with the embarrassment of being discovered. I'll take it from here, kids, Kakashi announced. They're saying Naruto activated his bloodline limit, Sasuke said, words so heavy with resentment it was a wonder they didn't choke him. Ma. People talk a lot. Don't mind it too much. Dad? Naruto looked up at him. Am I alright? I'm not sick or anything, right? Of course not, Kakashi said, missing cheerful by a few crucial notes. Come on, pup, let's find somewhere to sort this out. It was hard to sense Kyuubi's chakra tainting Naruto's clean, bubbly essence. Harder to put a hand on his shoulder and guide him instead of flinching away, but Kakashi would never hurt his son like that. Hataki-san? A nurse called the name, then blinked as she recognized the adult in the little cluster of genin. Hataki-san, she said again, tone completely different. We were just about to check your son over. The doctor is ready for him now. Thanks, Nurse-san, Kakashi said lightly. But I think I'm gonna take him home instead. I got this. The nurse looked concerned, but technically it was the family's prerogative if they wanted to deal with a bloodline activation in-house. She did extract promises to return if even the slightest thing seemed amiss, then reluctantly let Kakashi steer the little troop to the door. He shooed away the kids he wasn't responsible for and took a firm hold of the one he was. 2 flicker steps later and they were on a rooftop a block away. All right, Kakashi said, letting Naruto go. Wanna tell me what happened? Naruto looked almost scared. I don't really know, he blurted. The whole mission came tumbling out, everything that had happened. We were on the mission, and Asuma-sensei told us that there was a wild tiger terrorizing a bunch of farmers, so we had to kill it. But it was a summons from this crazy guy who totally wanted to take a bunch of Konoha shinobi hostage to know why. Something about revenge on this shinobi dude who stole his girlfriend. He was mad, it was a dumb plan. Kakashi said, making a mental note to get the details from Asuma and find out if the rogue man still needed dealing with or not. Anyway, so we totally were doing okay tracking the tiger, but then we found it, and it's like huge. I might have frozen up a bit at first, but then we got into it, and it was alright. And we were fighting and suddenly the guy is there, and there's like 8 of the tigers and Asuma-sensei's freaking out and telling us to fall back. And then one of the tigers got Kiba in its mouth and he screamed. Naruto paused and swallowed. It was awful, Dad. I thought he was dead. I got so angry. That's understandable, Kakashi said. He was gripping Naruto's hand tightly, trying not to fall into a retrospective panic attack at the news of the danger his son had been in. I don't really remember what happened after that, I guess I kinda blacked out. But when I came to, the bad guy was gone and Asuma-sensei looked majorly freaked out. He asked me what happened, and when I said I didn't know, he wanted to know about my bloodline. Naruto shrugged. I told him about the white chakra, but he didn't, that wasn't what he meant. Then he went all quiet and brought us straight home to the hospital. Yes, this is something that you haven't inherited from me, his father confirmed. Naruto's forehead was furrowed in deep concern. You think that this is from my mom? Oh, if only he knew. Your mother had many gifts, Kakashi hedged. And well, we weren't a good match. Damn straight, they weren't a good match. Kakashi's inner 9-year-old curled up in revulsion at the idea of pairing himself and Kushina. A rugwag. He pushed aside the inner cringe and refocused on diffusing a situation that had the potential to completely expose his son to unfathomable danger. Not to mention bring to light every lie he'd ever told his son. I'm worried that our genes may not have mixed too well, he continued. There seems to be some issues now that you're mixing bloodline inheritance from your mother as well as me. So I'm wrong? No, Naruto, you are not wrong. You are. A question that has never been posed before, Kakashi said. He reached out and put a hand on his son's head. There is nothing wrong with you. But I have no framework for what's going to happen, no prior experience. I can't guide you through what will happen as you grow. Naruto looked frightened, and Kakashi's heart clenched. We'll work it out together, he promised. Then he smiled. Until then, though, I might call Jiraiya. We're gonna lock down the extra chakra with a seal until you're a bit older and ready to deal with it, okay? A moment of indecision flickered over his face, then Naruto nodded. Okay, he said quietly. His voice strengthened when he added, that's a good plan. The boy tossed himself at his father, and Kakashi caught him and tucked him under an arm. It's gonna be okay, he promised. Naruto nodded against his side. I'm glad you're here, Dad. Kakashi hummed a little, patting golden hair. He was already plotting what he would have Jiraiya do, a 5-point seal to dampen the QB further, perhaps, and maybe it would be a good opportunity to integrate it into the original containment seal. That would give them a great excuse if Naruto or anyone else ever noticed it. Of course I'm here, he said to the boy. Where else would I be? By mutual consent, everyone was allowed a day to recover before debriefing. As a result, Kakashi wasn't surprised to see Guy approaching across the training field the next morning with a look on his face that indicated they had things to discuss. Kakashi turned towards him, ready to listen to the account of how Sasuke had gone on the mission. He would receive similar reports in the next 24 hours from Kurenai and Asuma. No. Kakashi glanced at Sasuke, who had gone an interesting kind of milky gray color. He said. Did you say something, Sasuke? I'm not going back on his team, the teen said, gesturing at Guy with something like desperation. You can't make me. I won't do it. I'll resign first. Was, Kakashi said unfeelingly. Go practice that double flip then. Sasuke was relieved enough to actually bob his head in a tiny, shallow bow of thanks before bolting for the other end of the training ground further away than he strictly needed to go for room to practice the maneuver. Kakashi turned away from watching his student flee at top speed and smiled at his peer. So, how did he do yesterday? Sasuke landed from his latest attempt at the flip off-center, but at least he was managing to get his feet beneath him now and stood. He didn't move, eyeing Guy off suspiciously. Kakashi raised his hand in an unmissable summon. Get over here, Uchiha. Grudgingly, Sasuke approached. Yes? He said, stopping a good 10 yards from Guy. Kakashi was willing to forgive the Guy radius. It had taken years to chip away his own. To this day, he wasn't really sure how Guy had managed it. You owe Guy-sensei an apology for your rudeness, he said sternly. Sasuke's face fell into an immediate scowl. He looked resentfully through his bangs first at Kakashi, and then at Guy. They were rude to me, he said. Guy's genin outrank you. They're allowed to be rude, Kakashi pointed out. Apologize. Sorry. The word was correct, but the tone was about as close to a screw you as possible. Guy seemed to sigh at him. You seem terribly impatient, child. You are making good progress, he told him. Trust your teachers, we shall guide you to greatness. An actual growl burst from Sasuke at that, too quickly to be stifled. He clenched his fists, glaring at the adult. That's not true, he snarled. Why are you even here? At least Kakashi doesn't lie. I'm nowhere near as advanced as I don't even have my Sharingan. Guy blinked. For a moment, He actually looked shocked to the core. You have not, he agreed. But I have always considered that a triumph. Words failed Sasuke at how unimaginably ignorant this freak was. He felt another flash of irritation that he was being forced to suffer him when he could be doing something useful. A triumph? He managed to spit. It's a failure. I'm too weak. When he was my age, he was already Sasuke's own anger and frustration choked him, so he rounded the rant off with a growl. He watched Guy glance at the other genin who had stopped to watch the altercation and then glance at Kakashi, and vaguely registered that the adults were considering moving this conversation. Sasuke raised his chin stubbornly. He had no intention of taking a single step to shield his peers from this sensei's stupidity. After a significant pause, Guy spoke again. When I was young, he said, choosing every word carefully, I too compared myself to another. It seemed that he was better than I in every way. My elders would point at him and scold me, admonish me to be more like him. It took me many years to understand that my own strength was as great as his, but different. He seemed strangely determined not to look at Kakashi as he spoke, and Kakashi seemed about to say something but still too quickly for Sasuke to tell for certain. He didn't care, anyway, just like he didn't care about the learnings of this idiot. This extrovertic weirdo would never understand. But his next sentence shocked Sasuke. I have spent many years and much youthful vigor on studying your clan's blood gifts so that I could develop the ultimate Sharingan defense, Guy told him. I have seen invariably that possessing such skills does not help, Sasuke-kun. Your brother, I believe, was twisted by the Sharingan he possessed, and it drove him mad. You, by contrast, have the chance to become truly great in your own right, without relying on a Sharingan crutch. You know about the Sharingan? Sasuke blurted. Could that possibly be true? Could this strange man teach him how to defeat Itachi? Was that even possible? He looked at Kakashi in search for some confirmation, explanation, anything. Kakashi just watched him with an unreadable eye before pointedly looking over at his comrade. Following the prompt, Sasuke looked the Jonin over again with new eyes. Yes, he was eccentric, and yes, he had appalling fashion sense, but he stood like a shinobi. Like a killer. He held himself with the same easy confidence that Itachi had, that Kakashi had. The confidence that came with long hours of practice and proving time and again that no matter what the world threw up in his face, he would survive it. The new clarity shook Sasuke to the core, rattled him in a way he didn't understand. He took a step back, then another. I'm sorry I was rude, he found himself saying in an attempt to excuse himself. I'm going back now. The adults let him go. Before you all leave, Kakashi said, stopping the genin in their tracks. The day was all but done, and all three had been doing their final cool-down stretches. 3 sets of eyes on him, and he smiled easily. I'm sure you've all heard the rumors by now, he said. The Chunin exam will be hosted by Konoha this year. You 3 will not be participating. He paused and waited for the response. There wasn't really one. Figured, Sakura said, shrugging. You're not completely scot-free, Kakashi protested, a little disappointed at the lack of reaction. I've been asked to help proctor some of the exam, since you lot aren't in it, so I think we should use this as a learning exercise. You lot can come, watch and learn, and in 6 months or so when I enter you, you'll know exactly what to do and I won't have to refuse to show my face in public out of sheer embarrassment, Kakashi finished up with a mask-hidden smile. His son rolled his eyes. Yeah, 'cause that would be such a huge change, he muttered. Now, there are going to be a lot of foreign ninja around, Kakashi lectured. I want you all to look out for one another, and watch each other's backs. Report anything suspicious, don't accept anything offered to you and don't follow them anywhere. Alright? This is stupid, Sasuke muttered, turning away with a growl. Damn it, even if you won't enter the baby, you could still enter me. He exploded at Kakashi. The Jonin raised a silver eyebrow at him, inwardly delighted to have the reaction he had been looking for, albeit a little delayed. Sasuke, he said flatly, a rank doesn't necessarily denote skill. You could be labeled a Chunin now, and you wouldn't be any more skilled than you were 10 minutes ago. I'd have thought you'd be pleased with me, not wasting your time on an exam that, for all intents and purposes, gets you no closer to your goal. Do you really need the Hokage to assess your skill level? Or would you rather me help you improve it? Yeah, you'd probably survive the exam. Might even be promoted, if you're lucky and impress the judges. But I promise you, your brother is above Chunin level. When I think you can survive the ANBU captain exam, then I'll waste your time with assessment. Okay? Sasuke scowled and turned away, but he was obviously appeased by Kakashi's little speech. I'm going home, he announced and left. Sakura chewed her lip, looking between the pouting, cross Naruto and the smiling teacher. Sensei, she said anxiously, we're not going to. Oh, I'm sorry, Naruto, but we're not getting held back because Slitleria Sensei? The question came out in a rush, as if speed would blur it and make it less painful for the youngest member of the team. The girl felt awful. Naruto tried so hard, but she had to know, she had to. Sensei looked at her kindly. Sakura, he said simply, in order to become a Chunin, you have to prove that you are a Chunin. That means surviving B-rank situations on your own. Genin have died in this exam. Now I know I tend to over rather than underprotect, but be honest, what do you think? Sakura, who had gone a little white, just nodded, squeaked out some sort of thanks and farewell, and left in a hurry to avoid Naruto's accusing gaze. There was silence on the Red Bridge for a while. Kakashi happily watched the water flowing beneath them, his inner sadist purring contentedly. Finally, Naruto shifted and uncrossed his arms, putting hands on his hips instead. Well? Kakashi didn't look away from the clear water. Well, what, Narupup? Don't call me that. Aren't you going to tell me some bull about why I'm not in this exam too? Or am I supposed to be psychic? Kakashi finally turned to look directly at his son. His voice was light as he said, language, Narupup. And I already told you. You're just too little. His voice adopted a sing-song tone. Naruto growled and thumped his father's vest-clad chest. I'm not a baby. I know, but I could never let my little boy loose with all those nasty genin from other countries, now could I? Kakashi sang, catching the fist that swung at him a second time, as well as the follow-up. Naruto kicked him instead, and he laughed. I hate you, Naruto said stoutly, and Kakashi felt the words that usually amused him drive a shard deep into his chest. This Chunin exam would fly by, and in a blink the next one would be here, then the next, and before he'd had time to catch his breath Naruto would be saying those words and actually meaning them. When that happened, the laughter drained out of his dad's face, and the strong grip on his wrist slackened, allowing Naruto to slide away. Dad? He said cautiously. I didn't actually mean it, you know? I guess we've only been genin for like a year. In peacetime, don't most genin take double that before even attempting the Chunin exam? Dad? HM? Oh yes, that's what's normal, I suppose, Kakashi agreed, reaching out and tugging the blonde closer to carved fingers through his hair, savoring the fact that he was still allowed to do so, knowing his moments with his son were counted. So can we watch the exam, yeah? Naruto said, beginning to lead the way home. Kakashi fell in step and settled into the casual conversation. Yes, you can, the parts that are open to the public. It will be good for you to see it, anyway. Awesome. So what's the exam like anyway? Did you bring a puppy to our dinner? Asuma demanded. Kakashi smiled as he slipped into the booth. Ma, why not? Kurenai cooed. Ah, she's so cute, she said, lifting the dog from Kakashi's arms and holding her up. The puppy licked her nose. And so sweet. What's her name? Sakura too, Kakashi said, sounding vaguely amused. Naruto brought her home from the festival and named her after his teammate. She's so fluffy, said Genma, leaning away as if the dog's pink collar might infect him. Hand me a beer, Kakashi said instead of commenting on the relative poofiness of Sakura-too's fur. Well, here's to a successful mission, Asuma said, handing over one bottle and raising another. It was a C rank with genin, Anko said derisively. Not mine, Genma said dryly, clinking his bottle against Asuma's. Cheers. Let's eat before we get smashed, Kurenai suggested quickly, seeing how this could easily descend into the sort of chaos that got them kicked out hungry. Spolsport, said Anko, setting down her already empty first drink. Are you guys happy with your intervention? Kakashi asked. He put up his hand to signal the waitstaff. A pretty young waitress spotted him and started to make her way to their table. Or do I need to brace myself for part 2? It seems to have helped, Guy offered. You have seen that your beloved offspring is capable. Hataki-san, you can't bring a puppy in here, it's a restaurant, the waitress said, reaching their table. Kakashi looked down at where Sakura too was chewing his fingers and then back up at the waitress. She's an Iken, he lied with a perfectly straight face. The waitress looked at him disbelievingly. Like a good friend, Asuma backed Kakashi in his fib. It's true, he said. Not cool to try and separate a shinobi and his familiar. Fine, the waitress sighed. Just try not to let it chew the furniture, okay? What can I get for you? By the time she had taken everyone's order, accounted for alterations and dealt with Anko changing her mind 3 times, the poor girl looked very ready to leave the difficult table. Perhaps she had learned why her manager had been refusing to let his gaze wander in the direction of the large gathering of shinobi. All right, this will be out soon, she said, and vanished into the kitchen. Kakashi placed Sakura too on the table, where the puppy immediately began to attack a paper menu. Who's a fierce Niken? Anko cooed. Who's a fluffy little killer? Sakura too growled at the menu, trying to shake her head to tear off a piece. Instead, she ended up tumbling over in a mess of 2 large paws, teeth still clenched on the menu. She squirmed, found herself unable to get up without first releasing the menu, and seemed to accept her new reality. She blinked upside down at the humans and began to chew happily. Kakashi tickled her exposed stomach and smiled as her fluffy tail began to thump. Totally a Niken, he told his friends. How is your kid anyway? Asuma asked. Kakashi shrugged. Very pleased with himself but largely unchanged, he said. I am reasonably convinced that you didn't bring me back the wrong child. I meant his bloodline, Asuma said, rolling his eyes. Suppressed for now. Until we can sort it out. Kakashi used a dismissive tone, hoping to get him to drop the topic as soon as possible. To his surprise, Asuma nodded approvingly. Good. I was worried it was going to tear Naruto apart, he admitted. The way he screamed, I went to help him, and couldn't touch him. Couldn't even get close. He burned my hand. Sheepishly, Asuma showed his bandaged hand. Shit, man, Genma said. It wasn't often that something like that couldn't be healed to the point of not needing dressing after a visit to a medic. Is Naruto alright? Kurenai asked. She looked at Kakashi with eyes full of gentle concern. I didn't realize this was an unknown bloodline. He's fine, said Kakashi a little more firmly than he should have. Then, Sasuke seems to have adopted him as the world's most trying little brother in order to help him with bloodline groundwork. Wait, seriously? Anko demanded. She started to laugh. Holy crap, I have to see that. What a brilliant display of youthful teamwork. Guy cheered. What wonderful and immediate progress. I'm certain that his time exposed to my springtime of youth has triggered this new largesse. Guy seemed to have totally forgotten the frustration he had expressed to Kakashi after his time with Sasuke. Maybe, Kakashi said in the same tone he'd used to declare Sakura to a Niken. You should approach him about extra training. Okay, maybe he was still a little hung up on how much of a brat the last Uchiha was. Nothing wrong with a little harmless revenge. Your lucky Jiraiya was close by to help, commented Kurenai, who had been told about the ceiling when she visited Kakashi during his team training. He's always around near the Chunin exam, Kakashi said, shrugging. He wasn't hard to track down. Before long, their meals had arrived and the gathering dissolved into theft and chopstick duels. Kakashi resorted to throwing Sakura too like a hand grenade to get an opening to steal 2 of Anko's dumplings. This was immediately followed by Anko lunging over the table in an attempt to retrieve them. She ended up in Kakashi's lap, wrestling him for the food clutched precariously in his chopsticks. They struggled for a long moment before Kakashi proved victor in terms of sheer strength and was able to stuff both dumplings into his mouth. Anko immediately picked his pocket in petty revenge. What is this? She exclaimed, coming away with a folded slip of paper. Kakashi made a grab, but she was already over his shoulder, balancing on the backrest of the booth. Without pause, she jumped to the other side and settled back into her seat. "Oh, a letter," she crooned. She broke the seal and opened the paper. "Give that back," Kakashi said. He looked at his peers, all of whom were starting to grin as they spotted a way to tease one of the most untouchable and yet most vulnerable members of their group. "All the way from Hyuga Outpost," Anko said, putting on her storytelling voice. "Dear Kakashi, ooh, dear Kakashi, huh?" "A promising start," said Guy. "Do you even need me here for this, or can you just mock me while Sakura too and I drink at the bar?" Kakashi asked, trying to sound bored. "We really do need you here," said Genma, grinning. Anko cleared her throat. "Dear Kakashi," she read again, "I'm sure by the time you get this, Naruto will be home safe and all your worries have not come to pass." Her tone changed. Did you tell on us, Kakashi?" "Of course he told on us. He's always been a tattletale," said Asuma. "Not always. Sometimes I solve my problems by beating the tar out of people who bugged me," Kakashi threatened. Frustratingly, he was just laughed at even though he had personally beaten every person at that table into the ground at least once in his career. "You do know that your friends are only trying to help you," Anko continued reading. "I hope that Naruto learns lots and comes back with a good ha." She's crossed out good and written boring over the top. Anko began to laugh so hard that Genma took the letter from her hand to continue it himself. "A boring story to tell you," he finished. "All is well here. There has been some wild weather. I had a patient last night who was tossed off the cliff by the wind and fell 30 feet into the fjord. He only survived because he was very drunk, and because his friends managed to fish him out and bring him into the hospital wing of the outpost." Genma was interrupted by a theatrical snore. Anko, recovered from her laughing fit, was now miming sleep. "Boring," she declared, popping up again. "Gimme." Genma surrendered the letter easily and she looked down the page. "Okay, patient story, moved to new quarters, got a new uniform, blah blah blah, oh. Here we go! I've been thinking about you a lot." "Wahoo," said the rest of the table in unison. "Okay, give me my letter back now," Kakashi said, trying to sound stern enough to not give away how his heart rate had skyrocketed. This was starting to sound like the sort of thing he'd really much prefer to keep private. The joke was suddenly changing from annoying to genuinely threatening. Naturally, Anko ignored him. "I was wondering if you really meant it when you wrote that you would like to see me if I was ever in town. I have some leave coming up and I thought I might come back to Konoha for a visit." "I can't believe that Kakashi has a pen pal girlfriend," Asuma exclaimed. "It is most unjust for you to keep this a secret, my rival," added Guy, who was enjoying this just as much as everyone else. Kakashi glared at him. "She's not my girlfriend. We're friends. I'm friends with Kurenai too." "I don't appreciate the tone in which you said that," Kurenai said primly. "Have some more alcohol and be a good sport." Kakashi grumbled, but he did accept the half-finished beer that Genma handed him. "Don't be afraid to tell me if you'd rather I not," Anko continued to read. "But I'd love to see you in person and get to know Naruto a little better. Right soon." Wait, Rin?" she blurted. "Your mystery sweetheart is Rin?" "She's not my sweetheart," Kakashi said again. "We were teammates. We are now friends. Can I have my letter back now?" "Do we need another intervention?" Genma asked, and it was toned very much like a threat. Kakashi growled. "Rin made a mistake last time she was in town. She overreacted, but her priorities were in line with my own. She just wanted to protect Naruto." "Holy shit, he is in love," complained Asuma. "Fuck." Kakashi wrangling just got like 20 times harder. "I don't need to be wrangled," Kakashi protested. Asuma just waved like he was shooing the words away. He dug in his pocket for his cigarettes and pulled one out of the pack to light up. "You're all making more of this than you should," Kakashi tried, thoroughly exasperated with the extended and varied overreaction. "Rin was your friend too, remember?" "Good point," said Kurenai, who had spent many mornings arranging flowers and trading hair care tips with Rin in her youth. "Perhaps we too should reconnect with our comrade?" Guy suggested. "If my rival Kakashi has taken it upon himself to extend the youthful hand of friendship, we should follow suit." Hey, good idea, guy, said Anko, sitting up straighter. When she comes to town, we're having a class reunion dinner. She leveled a finger at Kakashi. You bring her to see us. We'll make friends. Kakashi dropped his face to rest on the table. A delighted puppy rushed across the table to lick his exposed ear. Someone get me another beer, he ordered his impossible friends. Honestly, whose bright idea was it to have friends? The ruined Hyuga compound was bustling with noise and movement. It was likely more activity than those serene acres had ever known. Buildings were being gutted to the barest salvageable bits, and scaffolding was going up all over the place. Builders and bricklayers and stone masons and tilers and electricians scrambled all over the site, busily following the plans that Hiashi and the clan elders had finally signed off on. Rebuilding had begun. Picking their way through the worksite of their old to new home was a tall, imposing figure in white followed by a smaller figure in cream. Hiashi paused frequently to inspect some work or another. Niji trailed a few feet behind, deep in stubborn teenage boredom. He didn't know why his uncle had brought him along, but it was monotonous and frustrating. Niji, Hiashi said. Niji hurried to catch up to his guardian. Yes, sir? Hiashi nodded towards a wooden frame. You might not recognize it, but this is to become our new family home, he said. We are in the master bedroom right now. Off to that side will be the girls' rooms, and your room will be down to the left. What do you think? Sir? Of the construction, Hiashi clarified. What do you think? Niji gave him an alarmed look, but duly turned his gaze to studying the wooden framework. It looks solid, uncle. The work is good, it will stand for a long time to come. But? If you were to offset the jibbing so that they alternated, it would mean that the wall to each room stood alone, with several millimeters of space between them. Oh? And what would that achieve? Hiashi asked. Niji lifted his head, clearly deciding to stay the course despite his nerves. It would leave a layer of air as insulation. It would soundproof the house, for very little extra cost. When Niji chanced to look at his uncle's face, he found the almost unheard of sight of a slow smile spreading across Hayashi's face. Just a small one, but it was there. What a wonderful notion, he said, and the proud look in his eyes was enough to kindle something beneath Niji's sternum. They continued their pilgrimage in silence. Again, it was Hiashi who broke it. I hear from Hinata that you have recently completed a mixed team C rank, he said. Niji's face didn't change. He nodded. Yes, uncle. Uchiha Sasuke-san was assigned to our squad. And the mission was a success? Honestly, it was like pulling teeth getting Niji to open up. The boy tipped one shoulder up half an inch before the muscles in his back tensed to suppress the motion. Hiashi didn't respond, which was as good as a congratulations. He was forever scolding his children not to resort to such vulgar means of communicating their thoughts. The mission was completed successfully, Niji said carefully. There were some interpersonal issues that made us an ineffective team in itself, despite that outcome. Yes, clashes like that can make things difficult, Hiashi agreed. He hopped over a pile of plasterboard in a graceful two-point bound and waited for Niji to clamber over himself. And Sasuke-kun? What did you think of him? He prompted as his nephew scaled the plasterboard and slid down the other side without causing it to collapse. He is a fine shinobi. Niji could have been reading a script verbatim for all the expression in his voice. He is skilled and intelligent, and shows both autonomy and ingenuity. He does, Hiashi agreed. Not unlike yourself in that regard. I rather wondered if the two of you would rub each other the wrong way. Niji didn't look very happy with the news that his uncle found himself, and the bratty tag-along kid similar. He has no manners, he complained. And no interest in cohesive teamwork. He's talented, but a liability in the field. Yes. Sasuke-kun's troubles are well known, Hiashi agreed. He reached out to pet a peach tree that had mostly survived, but would be uprooted to make way for a new footpath. Then he indicated to his shadow that they were to scale the scaffolding surrounding one of the new buildings so they could inspect the progress being made on the roof. He is inconsolable, sir. And very driven, Niji said. And this troubles you? Niji was quiet, looking at his feet as they picked their way across scaffolding. Hiashi watched him, wondering if his nephew would admit to noticing parallels between the Uchiha boy and himself. He chose not to notice the dirty smudges that were appearing on Niji's pale clothing as they progressed through the construction site. I believe that the path Sasuke-kun has chosen will lead only to suffering, Niji said at length, and Hiashi inclined his head. It is very likely, he said. What ought Sasuke-kun do instead? What would you counsel him, were you in his confidence? To accept his situation and make peace with it? That was a guess and a question. The child was fishing for the answer his uncle wanted. Hiashi folded his hands before him, letting his muslin robe fall over them in a graceful cascade. It was still a pristine white, no trace of the dust and grime surrounding them. Would you accept such advice, in Sasuke-kun's position? He asked dryly. Would you consider it good advice? No, sir, Niji admitted quietly. I don't think I would. And perhaps quite rightly so. Such loss, such betrayal, is hard to simply accept. There must be restitution for great wrongs. So he should let hatred fester? Niji asked. And fix himself on the pursuit of revenge? They were no longer discussing Uchiha Sasuke, if they ever really had been. Hiashi considered his answer carefully. I think that such a path cannot lead to fulfillment. As you yourself have already observed, he said. However, I do think that the emotions must be addressed in the end. How is hard to say. He paused, letting the heavy moment rest on his heart for a few moments, then continued. Niji, you two have known great loss, and the weight of a clan, he said. You and Sasuke-kun have much in common. But you have a great many advantages that Sasuke-kun does not. You still have the love and support of your family, even if your father is no longer with us. And I will protect and shelter you as long as I live. Niji was looking at him with wide eyes. Hiashi put a hand on his shoulder. Try to be kind to Sasuke-kun, he said. His burden is heavier than yours, and there are forces at work that neither of you understand. Yes, uncle. Good lad. Come on, let's get some food. My treat, Naruto said. The others eyed him suspiciously. Where did you suddenly get funds from? Sasuke asked. Naruto grinned and held up a slender brown rectangle. I stole Dad's wallet when he took off his pouch during training today. Just because I could. You cheeky little brat! Exclaimed Sakura with absolute affection. Let's try the barbecue place Ino's team always goes to. Haven't we already done a team meal there? Naruto wondered, but pointed his feet towards the restaurant anyway. Sakura pointedly didn't answer. You're different, Sasuke said. He was looking at Sakura like he couldn't quite figure her out. Like she was an ornamental box on the mantel he'd ignored his whole life, only to suddenly realize it had a hidden compartment built in. Sakura met his eyes and only blushed a little. On the mission, she said, the C rank on Kurenai-sensei's team, she was amazing. I've never seen anything like that before, not from a woman. And she's so pretty and confident, and I froze up when we were attacked by the bandits. Kurenai-sensei saved me. When the battle was over, she started to shout at me. I've never seen her so angry. And she said if I wanted to be a kunoichi, I had better learn to be a good one before I got myself and my team killed. That's pretty harsh, Naruto mused. Sasuke didn't say anything. He understood, in a way that the younger boy didn't yet. Sakura had been rattled as he had been, shown every inch of her limitations and dared to improve them. I think she was just trying to give me a bit of a wake-up call, Sakura was saying to Naruto, shrugging. She wasn't being nasty for the sake of it. And it made me think I'd never be able to live with myself if I got you or Sasuke-kun killed, so I need to get better. Her eyes slid back to Sasuke. Besides, Kurenai-sensei said that you might like me better if I was less of a burden. She told me to become a rival, if I can. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. He privately doubted Sakura's ability to ever get to a level where he might be able to consider her a rival. On the other hand, it was an admirable goal. Much better than her fawning over him until he couldn't breathe, anyway. Hey, look over there. Naruto broke through his thoughts by gesturing at a little cluster of people off to the right, nearly 20 feet away. It was a group of ninja. They were kids, dressed strangely and looking very out of place standing on the corner of a crossroad beneath a large tree. They had the look of a genin team about them, one blonde girl, a boy in black with a large pack strapped to him, and a short redhead with a mean expression. "They're from Suna," Sakura reported, her sharp eyes picking up the symbols on their clothing. "Here for the exam, I bet." "Do you think they're lost?" Naruto asked. They did look pretty scared. He took a step towards them only to find his way suddenly blocked by his teammate. "Come on, let's go," Sasuke said. He gripped Naruto's elbow and tugged, pulling him along. "They'll find their way. Stay away from those people, Naruto. They're foreigners." Sakura said they're from Suna, Naruto protested, struggling against Hihold. "Suna are our allies." "Don't trust that," Sasuke said, glaring at Sakura. "You shouldn't tell the kid stuff like that when he doesn't understand. And you," to Naruto, "make sure you stay away from the foreign teams. Especially the ones who look half unhinged." "Sasuke-kun is right, Naruto," Sakura put in, looking sheepishly at her crush. "I didn't think. That is, Konoha has all sorts of alliances and treaties with other villages, but it doesn't mean much. Not when there's something to be gained by double-crossing. They'd betray us in a heartbeat." "So use that brain I know you have," Sasuke growled, rapping his knuckles hard against Naruto's skull. "If you can do algebra, you can remember the basics of stranger danger. Or do I need to dump you in the first-year academy class for a refresher?" "Oh. Stop that, you jerk," Naruto said, managing to squirm his way to freedom and jumping up to walk along the top of a handy fence, out of range. He rubbed his sore head resentfully. "You don't have to be mean, you know, Sasuke. We'd still love you if you were nice." Sasuke missed a step and stumbled, causing Sakura to try and help him, causing Sasuke to scowl and go pink, causing Naruto to laugh. "I think it's turning my dad gray, all the stress from having so many strangers in the village," he said, offering a new topic before Sasuke stormed off in a huff of bruised pride. He flipped himself off the fence, landing easily on his feet. Sakura giggled, and he grinned at her. "He says the color is my fault, but I think he's just a nervous personality," he added, fishing. That got even Sasuke to smirk. "Maybe we added a few," Sakura suggested. "Because now he has 3 of us to worry over." Sasuke snorted. "If you think our teacher wastes a single one of his worries on us, you're dreaming, Sakura," he said. "He spends them all on the brat." "That's not my fault," Naruto complained. "Sure it is," said Sasuke in a mocking tone. "You're daddy's little boy." Naruto shouted at him in wordless outrage. Sakura laughed, and the next moment the team were racing together down the street. The strange Suna team was completely forgotten. Finally, the day of the exam actually arrived. Team 7 met as usual by the Red Bridge, each feeling pretty put out by the lack of examination in their immediate future. So when Kakashi turned up and almost immediately dismissed them, it was a delightful surprise. "Go and check out the pre-exam jitters," Kakashi had said. "Meet back here at 10:30, when they've all gone inside to sit the written test. We're going to be covering reconnaissance and information gathering, so make sure you keep your eyes open at the academy. I'm going to ask you some questions." The Jonin had run all the way to the building where the exam was to be held, only to come to a stop in the middle of the play yard. There were so many people milling around. Really, it was pretty exciting. "Ugh, look at those guys from grass," Sakura said in an undertone, and Naruto obligingly looked around until he spotted them. "Pretty creepy," he agreed. "But I bet we could take him." No, Sakura said. "Look at their clothes. Is that really the fashion there? How do they move?" "What?" Naruto glanced at Sasuke just in time to see Sasuke glancing at him. The two shared an unexpected moment of camaraderie in the form of male bewilderment. "Why do you care?" Sasuke demanded. Sakura shrugged. "I don't, I guess. I'm just judging them for their life choices," she said, grinning. "But seriously, sleeves falling over their hands? Not exactly practical shinobi wear," said the girl wearing the pink dress. "At least I'm not going to trip over my clothes when I do a high kick." "Hey, I've seen you fall on your face doing high kicks before. Might want to keep the fact that you didn't need your clothes to trip you to yourself," Sasuke said, crossing his arms. "Rude." Sakura pouted at him. "Twin 1, send me your suggestions for the Chunin exam. No promises, but it could be really fun. Let's pull your combined creativity. That's it for part 8. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.